Hi, my friend, Caleb Johnson here, and I have a huge question to ask you, real estate investors. How would you rate your level of personal discipline on a scale of 1 to 10? If your answer is anything less than a 10, I've got something neat for you. And let me tell you, discipline means pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone and doing things that are difficult and sometimes boring. Achieving massive success requires you to do those difficult things. Building your levels of personal discipline is not easy, but it does pay off. In fact, you can't achieve anything significant without discipline. Now, I just released a program for investors where I walk with you as an accountability coach to aid you stay on track so you can push yourself to do the hard things that greatness is going to require of you. Starting is easy. Go to redcapitalgroup.com and click accountability coaching at the top right of the screen. So let's get to work, and now to the interview. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Caleb Johnson, host of From Trial to Triumph. I am very excited to share our guest with you today. He has an amazing story coming from the major leagues, and just hearing about what he's doing today, it's really exciting stuff. So, Christian Bergman, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Caleb. Really excited here.
Well, Christian, can you go ahead and give our audience just a quick background story about yourself?
Yeah, so I guess, we can go back to the very beginning, but, I was playing baseball since I was 4 years old. It's pretty much all I wanted to do growing up. So I got to high school, and, that was probably when I really started to, I guess, blossom, so to speak. And so I played on varsity my sophomore year through senior year, and to be honest, I'd never really thought about college or anything during that time. And all of a sudden, my sophomore year, I started getting letters from colleges asking, just kind of gauging interest in playing college baseball. And I'd never really thought about it until that point. I was just playing baseball. And so I committed to UC Irvine my junior year of high school. And so that's where I ended up going to school and playing college ball. And my first year at Irvine, we went to the College World Series. So really, from senior year of high school to playing and we actually played in the championship in Angel Stadium my senior year of high school. But there was not many people in the stands, right? It's high school championship. So there may be 1,000 people or so. Next thing I know, basically a year later, I'm in front of 35,000 people in Omaha. So my freshman year at Irvine was, it was definitely a pretty steep learning curve going from high school to D1 baseball. And I got beat up quite a bit on the field. Numbers weren't that great. And for those who don't know about, kind of the College World Series setup, really, if you lose a game, it's double elimination. But if you lose a game and you get into the losers bracket, it's a really tough road to get back and keep playing because you tend to run out of pitching. Usually you have 2 to 3 like really legit starters, but you can't pitch those guys every other day. So eventually we did lose a game. We were in the losers bracket. I ended up starting our last game against Oregon State, who won the World Series the year before. So that moment was like really a wake-up call where it was like, okay, this I do deserve to be here. Our coach and our team has put enough faith in me to start this game as a freshman. So maybe I do deserve to be here. And that was really a turning point in college. So the next year, we ended up going to the playoffs every year at Irvine. And then my sophomore, junior, and senior year, I was a big part of that, of those teams. And I think I hold or in the top 10 in a few categories at Irvine for career records and stuff like that. So,
Wow.
but on the, as I got through my sophomore year, started looking at professional baseball, right? Because that starts becoming a thing that's pretty nearby because you can get drafted as a junior. So, all indications were I was going to get drafted as a junior. And long story short, I watched every round of the draft, all 50 rounds. They had 50 rounds back then. And watched every round and never heard my name called. For
Wow.
whatever reason, I still don't know to this day why I didn't get drafted, but it was a big disappointment. So I went off and played summer ball in Alaska. That's where I'd gone the years before, and it was kind of a tough go of it for that period of time because like I
Hey,
was really committed to that.
hey, Christian, I love the story, brother, and I've never heard of baseball in Alaska. Is that actually a thing?
Yeah, they still have the league up there. It's a college summer league.
Wow.
I played
Okay.
for the Anchorage Bucks. Uh, yeah, and the teams have since changed a little bit, but yeah, it was
Mm.
actually a really fun time. And in college, it's probably the closest thing to like a professional schedule. So it's really good experience for college players.
Okay.
If you ever saw the movie, I'm blanking on the name of it now. The one in the Cape Cod League.
Okay.
Shoot, I can't think of the name of it right now. Most people have probably seen this movie, Summer Catch.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
that's a college summer league, and that's pretty much what it's like. It's just in Alaska.
Okay. Cool, man. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to clarify that because that's something I never heard before. But please continue.
Yeah, yeah. So then go back for my senior year at Irvine, and basically had the exact same sort of year, really good year. Went to the playoffs, didn't go as far, but I told myself I wasn't going to get drafted, or I wasn't going to watch the draft that year. And it was kind of the same story, like, yeah, you're going to be drafted somewhere between the 10th and 20th round, something like that. And so the day of the draft, I had my last final that day. I forget which subject it was, but was going to be graduating with a degree in psychology. That was my last final. So I watched the draft a little bit that morning, even though I said I wasn't going to. But then I had to leave for my final. Nothing had happened since then. I was like, okay, whatever. I guess this isn't happening. I don't know what I'm going to do now. But so I go take my final. I come out of my final and I turn my phone back on, and it just lights up with text messages and phone calls and voicemails and stuff. And I'm like, well, that's got to be a good sign. So I checked the
It's got to
voicemail, and the
be.
Rockies had drafted me.
Oh,
Yeah.
sweet. Okay.
Rockies had drafted me in the 24th round. And within about a week, I think, I found myself in Casper, Wyoming, middle of nowhere. Started my first professional season. So yeah, that's kind of the lead up to professional baseball.
Yeah. Very cool, man. I love that story. And I'm curious. Do you know someone named Zach Gimaiola? He played for the Rockies for
Yeah,
about
yeah, I
seven
do.
years. You know him? That's cool. He was in my men's
Yep.
Bible study, but that's crazy. Anyway, I'll digress. But super cool story. And, what was going through that trial? I've heard your story a little bit, and there's a lot that goes into it that a lot of people don't see. So whenever you're going through that, what is your mindset? Were you kind of like on clouds the whole time, or was it a little bit harder than that?
No, it was pretty difficult. You know, having the expectation to be drafted as a junior, and then it not happening, that was a big letdown. Um, Mindset after that was, well, I guess I'd just get back to, um, doing what makes me, good at what I do, and set myself up for another opportunity as a senior. I mean, that's all you can do.
Hmm.
Ultimately, you can't control whether or not a team drafts you. All you can control is the effort you put into your performance. Um, so yeah, I mean, I wasn't a hard thrower. I can pretty much guarantee you that if you took me as a player now, I don't get drafted in today's game. Um, Today's game is very velocity focused, and uh, by the way, there's also like half the rounds to even get drafted. So I was
Wow.
drafted in the 24th round. I believe they have only 20 now. So,
Wow.
but I always told myself, I just want the opportunity. Just give me the opportunity, and I'll take care of the rest. I don't care if I got drafted or not. I don't care how much I signed for. I don't care if I have to sign as a basically an amateur free agent. I don't care. I just want the opportunity. So once I got my foot in the door, I was like, okay, it's time to go. So I go to rookie ball, and sort of the same thing. Like, there's definitely a remarkable difference between even D1 college baseball going to professional baseball, because now you're playing with the best of the best, from where you were before, and you're playing with guys from other countries, Dominican Republic, all the Latin countries. So it's a whole different, literally, league you're stepping into. So got beat up again. That my first year in rookie ball, numbers weren't that great, and but that's kind of what I noticed is, like, when you make those big leaps, there's an adjustment period, and the only way to figure out how to get better is to just go through it. And so after that rookie year, I go to my first spring training, and spring training went pretty well, but the way it used to be, there were 2 short season leagues, meaning those were the leagues that started in June after the draft, and those are designed for guys who are just get drafted. So, like, I went to rookie ball. That was the lowest level after I got drafted. Well, there's also some guys in spring training that are already with the team, but they don't make a full season team. I was one of those guys. So another little setback, like, everyone's trying to make the full season team that goes out and starts playing in April. I didn't make that team. I was a later round pick. Rockies they hadn't seen enough from me at that point to put me on a full season team. So again, that's another, like, sort of, I don't know, disappointment. And you go into what's called extended spring training, where you stay in Arizona for basically April and May until that next level up of short season starts.
Okay.
So a lot of guys,
Christian, from my understanding then, so you have the Rockies that they'll go and they'll play in the major leagues, and then you have this almost backup team that's still in spring training. And so whenever let's say someone gets injured, then someone from the secondary team will kind of fill their place. Is that kind of how that works?
Yeah, there's multiple levels. So there's the Rockies, that's the major league team, but they have a bunch of minor league affiliates below them. There's AAA, there's AA, there's high A, there's low A, there's short season A, and there's rookie ball. So I started all the way in rookie ball, and most people do either rookie ball or short season. But those bottom 2 teams don't start till June. So the low A and high A teams, they start at the same time pretty much that the major league team does. So they're all having their own seasons. If someone gets hurt at the Rockies, they're usually pulling someone from AAA or maybe AA. It's pretty rare that they dip in below that, because those are just younger players. So those full season teams, though, that's what you're trying to make. So I didn't make that team. I had to stay back in Arizona during this extended spring training, and that's definitely not something you want to do. But I took it as an opportunity to figure out, like, okay, what was it that makes me good as a pitcher? What do I need to adjust? Because these games, nobody's watching these games. These games don't even count. So I might as well just start playing around with stuff. So that was another turning point for me. I took that opportunity to learn how to pitch at the professional level, and really kind of got into a stride at that point. So I go to short season A. I was an all-star there. We played in the championship game. The next season, go into spring training. I'm trying to make the high A team, so basically skip low A. I barely squeak in there by the skin of my teeth. Get to high A, and I'm like, okay, I gotta show that I deserve to be here in high A and skip low A. And had one of the best years of my career. Was an all-star again. Was actually the pitcher of the year in the California League. Next year, go to AA, make the all-star team again, play in the not the championship, but in the playoffs with that team. So basically, hit every level on the way up, and got to AAA in 2014, and that's the level right below the major leagues. So the the goal is in sight, so to speak. And
Yeah.
back then, the Rockies AAA team was in Colorado Springs, and Colorado Springs is in professional baseball. It's the highest elevation ballpark in all of professional baseball, which is difficult to pitch in this environment. So the thinking was that, your ERA, your earned run average as a pitcher is going to be higher in Colorado Springs because of the altitude, and that's just the way it is. Well, at a certain point, I was like, you know what? Like, I don't want to think like that. I'm not going to think like that. Why would I just go in and assume I'm not going to pitch well? What are the chances of me actually pitching well?
Right. Yeah.
if I go in with that mindset.
Right.
So,
Wow.
I literally, it sounds crazy, but I made a decision. Like, I'm not going to think that way. And, I'm going to pitch really well from here on out. I don't think I gave up a run I think I still hold the record there in that ballpark of it was 25 straight scoreless innings pitched or something like that, something crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally get called up to the major leagues after, shortly after doing that. So
Yeah.
it was it sounds like a short amount of time, 2010 and 2014, but there's a lot of grinding through that time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And especially owning a business really shows you that, right? You can look back 5 years and think, oh, wow, I've come a long way. But you think every day is a grind, man. And so you got to really just go through that. And from my understanding, just to break that down a little bit with Colorado and the altitude, so pitching, well, the ball goes farther whenever you hit it. And so that's why it's a little bit, there's that stigma around pitching in Colorado. Is that fair?
Yeah, there's that aspect of it. And in my opinion, the thing that really affects pitchers at altitude is the ability to execute their pitches and spin the ball a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're pitching at sea level and you throw a pitch a certain way and it doesn't quite come out right, there's a margin for error where you're still getting the right spin on it and you'll still get most of the effect. It may not be like the best version of that pitch, but it's still a pretty good pitch. That margin for error at altitude is so much smaller because there's less air. The seams don't catch. There's not as much air for the seams to catch. So if you throw a pitch wrong, it tends to just kind of flatten out and go straight. So there is the aspect of the ball actually carrying further, but the harder part, in my opinion, is actually getting your pitches to do what they want or do what you want them to do.
Okay, that's fair. Well, Christian, you said a couple things that I really want to pull out, and one was that if you're stinking is thinking when you're going into it, you're probably going to be stinking, right? So you go into that with the mindset of there's so many people that have this mentality or this stigma around it, and it's negative. And so how is that going to benefit me, actually to be successful? And so I just love that you just made that decision, and it really just comes down to making a decision. Right? Sometimes you just have to make a mental decision and a conscious effort to not have stinking thinking. And the second thing that I loved was what your mentality of just give me a chance. Just let me in. Just give me a chance. And for me, when I was starting investing in real estate, was I found a mentor and I called him up and I said, hey, man, I know what you do. I'll work for you for free. I'll unplug toilets at 2 a.m. I don't care. Just give me a chance. And I think, whenever you get to that level where it's like, I don't care what's going to happen. I'm going to do this, and whatever it takes, it's going to happen. And that you'll be amazed at what actually comes from that just when you make that first decision.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think just deciding internally that you're going to do something and you can do it and it is possible is, as far-fetched as it may seem, I think that's the biggest step you can take because, it's a 24th round pick that threw 89, 90 miles an hour. I wasn't supposed to get to the big leagues. Mm-hmm. I certainly wasn't part of the plan going into it. But, you keep showing up. And you keep putting the work in. And it's amazing what you can accomplish when you focus, on each task, each day, one day at a time. And that's not to say it was easy or it was difficult because you're not getting paid very much in the minor leagues.
Mm-hmm.
They literally just fixed that to some extent. But I was making basically 8 to 10 grand a year
Wow.
playing baseball.
Wow.
In the minor leagues.
That's not a lot.
So I also forgot to mention during the off season, like most guys. And I signed for $1,000, so I literally had no money. So during the off seasons, I had to work, and I worked for 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Nice.
And hauling away people's junk.
Yeah.
I actually got paid better doing that than I did playing baseball.
Wow. Wow. Well, that
So
just puts
help,
into perspective,
for
like all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny, like I live in Arizona now, and I still see the 1-800-GOT-JUNK trucks driving around, and it's always a little reminder of like where I started and what's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, definitely a good reminder. I think it can be like a good reminder, like motivating. And then you see that. And for me, like working for someone else gives me nightmares, that's just me though. I'm weird. But Christian, I want to kind of talk about to the person that wants to make it in sports, right? It might be maybe high school and kind of like you got those letters, or maybe they've had this dream forever, right? They just want to make it so bad. So what do they need to actually do that?
There is obviously a physical component to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider myself particularly physically gifted, but those things can be overcome. Jose Altuve, he's 5'6", and he's all-star caliber second baseman and won the World Series. Those things can be overcome. Obviously, it's harder, but it's not impossible. And that's for baseball, right? I mean, there's more physical components to basketball, football, some other sports. So, I'm not saying those things don't exist, but at least in baseball, from what I've seen guys of all shapes and sizes. People who you'd be surprised are professional athletes if you saw them on the street.
Yeah.
I'll just put it that way. So those things, at least in baseball, can be overcome, but really just dedication to your craft and working on it day in and day out. I mean, it took an entire lifetime to even put myself in the position to get drafted, right? Since when I was 4 years old. And obviously, like from 4 years old to like high school, just have fun. There's nothing worse than trying to make a kid take it too seriously. Your job at that point is to have fun and enjoy the game. But once you get to high school and college, like it starts to become more of a craft and something that you can, work more diligently at. I'd say those are the main things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that you said it takes a lifetime. And just to put that in perspective, like that is no joke. I think even owning a business, it might not take a whole lifetime, but especially let's just say you're major leagues, you're the best of the best. And so it took a whole lifetime, and not to say some people aren't gifted and maybe they just a couple years and it just hits them and they are just really blessed, with these abilities and these talents. But for the most part, if you want to be then the best of the best, you've got to work a lot at it. And so I think, you saying a lifetime, that really just puts that into perspective.
And also constantly like being willing to continue to learn, even when you're at that point. because once you get to the professional level, especially the major leagues, the difference in talent is actually pretty small. Everybody there is talented. Everybody there has hard work and work ethic and stuff like that. It's the little tiny things that make the difference. Now you do have some outliers like the Mike Trouts and some of the really ultra talented young players out there. Okay, they're a little echelon above, but the majority, if you think of like standard deviation, stuff like that, the majority of major league players, there's not a whole lot of difference between the two. So it's the little things, it's the mental aspects of the game. It's the way you train in the off season, stuff like that, and your willingness and ability to learn and adapt to what's going on around you. That's what separates guys, and I think that can be applied to anything. It's not just sports. Whether it's business, real estate, it's all the same thing.
Amen to that. So, Christian, kind of take us into the mindset of a baseball player, right? Because I've not ever been in the major leagues. So I'm curious for the mindset, whenever you get to that level, is it really more about the fun? Is it about the paycheck? Is it about you want to be on the best team that you can? What's kind of the mindset and what's the why for guys that are at that level?
I think money is about the worst one you could possibly pick. I don't know. I'm sure there's some guys out there who have gone a long way being motivated by the money aspect of it. But the mindset is to be the best player that you can possibly be. And that's going to vary based on who the player is. So, that and being a good teammate to the guys around you, and obviously you want to win. What I've found is that most guys, I venture to say all players at the major league level, they play their best when they're having fun, because at the end of the day, it is a game. And there's so many parallels to other aspects of life, not just baseball. When you're having fun doing something, you're going to do the extra things. You're just going to perform better. It doesn't matter what it is. If you have a job that you absolutely hate, you're not going to want to do the extra things, and you're not going to have the passion and intensity when you're doing that job. If you don't like the business you're in, it's not the same as somebody who loves that business. That's not to say there's not difficult days. Even as a baseball player, like a lot of people don't understand that, yes, like it's from the outside looking in, it's a very glamorous looking lifestyle. You get paid all this money to play a game, and oh, how nice that must be. But as you talked about before, it takes a lifetime to get there. There's a lot of trials and tribulations that you go through to get there. And even when you do get there, there are some days that are not very fun. When you have a bad game, which all of us do at some point, we know how bad it is, right? But then you have other people on top of you telling you how bad you are. And, you try to let that stuff kind of go over your head and in one ear and out the other. But, there's a lot of pressure associated with it. And I think the most important aspect of it, going back to your original question, the mentality is just to get back to controlling what you can control, one pitch at a time. And that's it. Because when you think about it as a pitcher, I can't control what happens after the ball leaves my hand. I have zero control over it. And, baseball is it's a game of failure. So you have to be able to have a short memory and, learn the lessons that can be learned from a certain game or a certain outcome and move on to the next one.
Well, Christian, I think we're going to start wrapping things up here. I wish we could talk more about this. It's really interesting stuff. But unfortunately, I think we're out of time. So the first question, Christian, that I got for you is if you can give a book recommendation to our listeners, what would that be?
Uh, it's my favorite book. It's a long one. I'd be surprised if if anybody goes out and reads it in a short amount of time. But my favorite book is Atlas Shrugged. I don't know if you've ever read it, but it's about 1,400 pages.
Wow, it's a beast.
But it's a beast, yeah. But it's very relevant to today's world, and it's also very inspiring. Kind of like in the aspect that 1984 is, was written long before, the current time, and it's becoming more and more relevant. It's a lot like that.
Okay. Is it kind of like a history book, or is it like a economics book?
It's a little economics, sort of, but it's the reach of the world that the book creates across 1,400 pages is pretty substantial, and it almost creates almost a dystopian sort of outcome is what society sort of degrades into as a result of certain economic, government, societal policies that start to be put into place. You kind of see the results of it in the story.
Interesting. Okay, and the second question is, if people want to learn more about you, where's the best place for them to do that at?
So our company is Mulligan Valley Capital. We do multifamily real estate investing. We're just launching a fund now that has an ability to do some multifamily, single family, stuff like that. So that's my business now. And then my website is christianbergman.com, just my name. And I have a group of baseball players that I work with, just on a very personal basis, where we really focus on helping guys transition out of the game, as well as set themselves up while they're playing, not just financially, but in all aspects of life, relationships, stuff like that. Just as someone who's been in their shoes and gone through the transition out of the game, that's really what the focus of that is.
Cool stuff. Yeah, and unfortunately, we didn't even talk really about what your business is. And I know with the market, the state of the market is such a big topic right now, but we'll have to talk about that maybe at another time. But Christian, number 3 would be, if you can share one final thing with our listeners that they can take away from today's show, what would that be?
I think paying attention to that voice inside your head that's telling you that, usually most of the thoughts are negative, right? That you can't do something, that you shouldn't do something, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody has that voice, even as a major league player. When you get to the major leagues, there's that voice there telling you, oh man, don't screw this up. Don't throw this pitch. And learning to recognize that voice and understanding that voice is not you, and that you can, as we talked about, literally do anything that you put your mind to, as long as you make that decision to do it. I'd say that's the biggest takeaway.
I love it, man. I love it. And Christian, thank you so much for being here. Just taking the time out of your day. I gleaned a lot from it, and I know our listeners will glean a lot from it as well. So I appreciate your time, man.
It's time to grab your victory. Find us on the web at redseacapitalgroup.com and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Red Sea Capital Group.